Usually, when we talk about metabolism, there is this expectation of, like, simple math.
Right, like a basic formula.
Exactly. It's framed kind of like a checking account. You make deposits when you eat, you make withdrawals when you move, and if you want to lose weight, you just, overdraw the account. It is supposed to be completely binary.
It is a very comforting idea.
Yeah.
I mean, we inherently like things to be predictable. We want to believe that if you follow a formula, the body will just compliantly follow along.
Yeah, but then you step out of the textbook and into the actual reality of human biology, and suddenly that simple checking account looks a lot more like a highly paranoid automated fortress.
That is a very good way to put it.
Right. It is actively fighting your withdrawals, it's hiding its most valuable assets, and completely rewriting the accounting rules while you sleep. So our mission today for this deep dive is to unravel that hidden machinery of your metabolism. We are going to look at the everyday hacks you can use to boost your energy burn, but we're also going to uncover a startling evolutionary plot twist about how your body actively fights back when you try to lose weight.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the human body is the ultimate survival machine.
Mm-hmm.
To truly understand metabolism, we have to respect its deep evolutionary memory. This is a system forged over hundreds of thousands of years of famine and brutal conditions, not, the modern abundance we live in today.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're working with a fascinating stack of sources to figure this out. We're pulling practical insights from a guide by EGYM on manipulating your basal metabolic rate, or BMR.
Which is foundational stuff, yeah.
Yeah, totally. But we are crossing that with a dense medical paper by researcher Abdul G. Dalu, which dives into concepts like adaptive thermogenesis and catch-up fat. By the end of this deep dive, you're going to understand why yo-yo dieting feels absolutely impossible to beat, why your muscles might secretly be trapped in starvation mode even when you're eating plenty of food, and what you can actually do about it.
It is quite a journey. We basically have to start with the surface-level changes we make in our daily lives and eventually travel all the way down to the microscopic enzymes operating inside individual muscle cells.
Let's start on that surface then. The EGYM material focuses heavily on your basal metabolic rate. For anyone who isn't familiar, BMR is essentially the energy your body burns just keeping the lights on.
Right, your baseline.
Right. Like if you lay in bed all day doing absolutely nothing, your body is still burning calories to pump blood, inflate your lungs, maintain your core temperature. And when it comes to actively changing that baseline, there's a massive line drawn in the sand between strength training and endurance cardio.
The distinction really comes down to the type of tissue you are building and how metabolically expensive that tissue is to maintain.
Expensive meaning it costs calories just to exist?
Precisely. Muscle is highly active tissue. The data points out that adding just 1 kilogram of muscle mass increases your basal metabolic rate by up to 100 calories per day. Your body has to spend energy just to keep that muscle alive.
100 calories doesn't sound like a mountain of energy, until you look at what happens when you lose it. There's this chilling example in the text for anyone who tends to skip the weight room.
Oh, the age-related muscle loss stat, yes.
Yeah. On average, men between the ages of 25 and 35 naturally lose about 3 kilograms of muscle mass if they aren't actively doing something to maintain it. Because of that lost muscle, they experience a metabolic deficit of about 2,100 calories per week.
Which means if their eating habits remain exactly the same as they were in their early 20s.
Just eating the exact same things.
Yes, exactly. Those 2,100 calories are now a surplus. The body has no muscle to feed, so it stores that energy as fat week after week without them eating a single extra bite of food.
That is terrifying. But it's not just about having the muscle sitting there, is it? It's about what happens to your metabolism after you use it. Strength training creates an afterburn effect that lasts up to 4 days. But I want to make sure I understand the why here. What is the body actually doing for those 4 days that burns so many calories?
Well, when you lift heavy weights, you are essentially inflicting controlled trauma on your body.
Trauma.
Yeah, trauma. You are creating microscopic tears in the muscle fibers. To repair those micro tears, your body has to synthesize new proteins, clear out cellular debris, and rebuild the tissue stronger than it was before.
And that takes a lot of work.
A massive amount. All of that biological construction work requires ATP, which is the basic unit of cellular energy. Your body is working overtime, burning fuel for days just to repair the damage.
Okay, now contrast that with standard aerobic cardio like jogging on a treadmill for an hour. According to the source, the truth here is a little bleak.
It is quite different, yes.
Yeah, it takes 3 hours of steady endurance training at 65% of your maximum heart rate just to offset one heavy meal. And the afterburn effect, It's basically zero.
That highlights a fundamental difference in how our bodies process different types of physical stress. Aerobic exercise is entirely about efficiency.
Efficiency, right.
When you run long distances, your body's goal is to get better at moving you from point A to point B using the least amount of fuel possible. It adapts by becoming a fuel-saving machine.
I'm trying to picture this. It's like comparing a hybrid car to a classic muscle car.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Like doing steady state cardio is like driving the hybrid. It is incredibly efficient while it is moving down the highway, but the second you stop at a red light, the engine just completely shuts off to save power. But strength training, that is the muscle car idling in your driveway. Even when it is parked, it's just guzzling gas around the clock.
That analogy holds up perfectly. And we see that same desire for inefficiency, which, again, is what we actually want if our goal is calorie burning.
Yeah.
We see that in high-intensity interval training, or HIIT.
Right, HIIT workout.
Exactly. The sources note that just 15 to 20 minutes of HIIT boosts your VO2 max just as much as an hour of steady aerobics, and it gives you an 8 to 24-hour afterburn.
And VO2 max being the maximum amount of oxygen your body can take in and actually use at the cellular level, right?
Exactly. With HIIT, you are repeatedly pushing the body into a state of oxygen debt and metabolic emergency. The body has to scramble to restore oxygen levels, clear out lactic acid, and bring the core temperature back down.
Okay.
That scrambling takes energy.
Speaking of core temperature, the EJIM guide gets into environmental stress. Things like temperature hacks. Saunas, for example, can raise your core temperature by 1 to 2 degrees Celsius. It basically creates this artificial fever. But how does that actually translate to burning calories?
It basically comes down to homeostasis. Your body desperately wants to stay at roughly 37 degrees Celsius.
Right.
When you sit in a sauna and your core temperature rises, your brain detects this and panics. It forces your heart to pump faster, moving blood to the surface of your skin to cool it down. You start sweating profusely. Your mitochondria, the powerhouses of your cells, have to work overtime to manage this thermal stress. All of this physiological panic requires energy.
And I assume the same goes for the other extreme. Contrast showers going from hot water to freezing cold water for 1 minute each.
Yes, absolutely.
You are forcing your blood vessels to violently constrict in the cold and then dilate in the heat. It physically pumps blood through your system, which they say helps squeeze out toxins. Even eating capsaicin, the active compound in spicy foods, triggers a process that turns energy directly into heat.
These are highly valid ways to manipulate the system. By building muscle and introducing thermal or interval stress, you are effectively turning up the thermostat in that muscle car. You're making the engine bigger and, frankly, less efficient.
Okay, so if strength training and thermal stress are these massive engines for calorie burning, why do people who lift weights while dieting still eventually hit a brick wall? Like, what is happening under the hood when we drastically cut the fuel to this engine?
That transition is where we move into the Delu medical paper, and where we encounter a phenomenon called adaptive thermogenesis. When people lose a significant amount of weight, their metabolic rate doesn't just drop because they are physically carrying around less mass. It drops disproportionately more than the weight they lost.
Meaning the math breaks. Like if I lose 10% of my body weight, my metabolism doesn't just slow down by 10%. It might slow down by like 20 or 30%.
Precisely. And this is controlled by the body's non-specific control system. It is a highly systemic, rapid response. Within just a few days of you entering a severe calorie deficit, the levels of two key hormones in your blood, insulin and leptin, just plummets. Leptin is the hormone that tells your brain how much fat you have stored.
So the brain sees the leptin drop and sounds the alarm.
It acts like a literal fire alarm. The brain immediately dials down the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight response, reducing your overall nervous energy. At the same time, it suppresses the HPT axis, the hypothalamic pituitary thyroid axis.
Wow.
This is essentially the master thermostat of your body. By suppressing it, your brain decreases the amount of systemic thyroid hormones floating around in your blood.
The brain just manually overrides the thermostat and turns the whole house down. And the real-world examples of this are staggering. I mean, have you ever heard of the Biosphere 2 experiment?
Yeah, it's a fascinating case study.
Back in the early 90s, 8 people were sealed inside a massive self-contained planetary habitat in the desert for 2 years. They had to grow all their own food, but the crops failed. They were effectively starving and lost about 14% of their body weight. The paper notes that even 6 months after they left the confinement and were back in the real world eating normally, their metabolism was still incredibly slow.
We see a profoundly extreme version of this in The Biggest Loser study, too.
Oh, the TV show.
Right. These were participants in a televised weight loss competition. Through grueling exercise and severe diet restriction, they lost roughly 40% of their body weight. Researchers followed up with them 6 years after the competition ended.
6 years later.
6 years later, their metabolic rates remained drastically suppressed. They were burning hundreds of calories less per day than someone of their exact same size who had never gone through that extreme weight loss.
Hold on, you lost me a bit there. So if I go on a major diet to get healthy, my body essentially punishes me by permanently slowing down my metabolism. Like it's ensuring that I regain the weight the second I slip up. That feels like a massive design flaw.
What's fascinating here is that we view it as a design flaw because of our modern context. You have to view this through the lens of evolution. Your body does not know you are trying to look good for a beach vacation.
Right.
When you drastically cut calories, your biology assumes you are living through a catastrophic famine. This suppression of your metabolism is an ancient, highly conserved survival tactic designed to keep you alive as long as possible on whatever meager fuel you can scavenge.
Okay, I get the survival aspect. The body slams on the brakes to keep me from starving to death. But what happens when the famine ends? Let's say the diet is over, or the biosphere doors open and I start eating normally again. This brings us to a term in the paper that, frankly, haunts me: catch-up fat.
It is a critical and often deeply frustrating concept for anyone who has ever tried to lose weight, because when the weight comes back, it does not come back symmetrically.
The asymmetry is wild. Look at that Biggest Loser study again. 6 years later, the participants had regained 70% of the weight they lost. But the composition of that weight was totally skewed. Their fat recovery was at 75%, while their fat-free mass, their muscle only recovered by 52%.
Yes.
The Biosphere 2 participants had it even worse. After leaving confinement, they regained an average of 8.8 kilograms. 8.4 kilograms of that was pure fat.
It is almost exclusively fat regain. And the researchers attribute this to what they call an adipose-specific control system. This is a slower secondary system that operates differently than the initial fire alarm we discussed. When you start eating again, your insulin and leptin levels shoot back up.
Okay.
Your brain sees the incoming fuel, turns off the fire alarm, and actually normalizes your sympathetic nervous system and your systemic thyroid hormones.
So what does this all mean? If my brain knows I am eating again and the systemic hormones in my bloodstream are totally back to normal levels, how does my body know to keep hoarding fat? If the brain is given the all clear, who is pulling the levers?
That is the million-dollar question, and it is where the Delu paper provides a truly major breakthrough. The brain isn't pulling the lever is being pulled locally, far away from the brain. It is a concept called peripheral tissue resistance. There is a hidden microscopic feedback loop operating entirely between your depleted fat stores and your skeletal muscle.
And this brings us to the secret saboteur of our entire metabolism: skeletal muscle hypothyroidism.
To understand how this hidden loop works, we have to look at how thyroid hormones actually function at the cellular level. Think of the thyroid gland in your neck as a factory. It produces a hormone called T4. But T4 is inactive. It's just a raw material. For that hormone to actually boost the metabolism inside a muscle cell, T4 has to be converted into the active form, which is called T3.
Okay, and how does it make that conversion?
That conversion is handled by an enzyme called deiodinase type 2, or D2. The D stands for deiodinase because it literally removes one iodine molecule from the T4, transforming it into the highly active T3.
So D2 is the spark plug. It turns on the energy.
Yes, but there's a competing enzyme called deiodinase type 3, or D3. D3 is the inactivator. It removes the different iodine molecule, taking that active T3 and degrading it into a completely useless molecule called T2. What the researchers discovered is that during weight regain, when your fat stores are desperately trying to catch up, your skeletal muscle drastically increases the production of that D3 enzyme.
Wait, why would the muscle intentionally destroy its own fuel?
To force itself into a localized starvation mode. Even if your blood work at the doctor's office shows totally normal systemic thyroid levels, the actual tissue of your skeletal muscle is hypothyroid.
Yeah.
It's completely starved of active T3 because the D3 enzyme is destroying it the second it arrives.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I'm picturing a house. The main electrical panel, which is the brain, is sending full power to the entire house because the famine is over.
Exactly. The systemic signals are normal.
But the muscle cells, they're like individual bedrooms down the hall where someone went in and completely unscrewed their own light bulbs to save electricity. The power is surging through the house, but the muscle refuses to use it. So where does all that excess electrical power go? It gets forced down the hall and straight into the basement, the fat cells.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. Because the muscle is turned down by that D3 enzyme, it fundamentally changes how it operates to save energy. It delays its own contraction and relaxation cycle to save ATP. It physically shifts its composition away from explosive fast-twitch fibers toward hyper-efficient slow-twitch fibers. And crucially, it becomes highly insulin resistant.
So when I eat a meal, the glucose from that food tries to enter the muscle, but the door is locked.
Yes. The glucose bypasses the muscle entirely. It gets shunted directly to the adipose tissue, the fat cells. This triggers a massive wave of what is called de novo lipogenesis. De novo, meaning from scratch, and lipogenesis meaning the creation of fat. Wow. Your body is taking that rejected energy and aggressively manufacturing brand new fat cells. And what is vital to understand is that this muscle insulin resistance happens entirely independently of lipotoxicity.
Let me stop you there. Lipotoxicity meaning having too much fat built up inside the muscle itself.
Correct. Often insulin resistance is caused by the muscle being sick or overloaded with fat. But in this case, the muscle isn't sick at all. It is simply following ancient evolutionary orders. It is intentionally sparing energy so the fat can rebuild first.
Because in the context of evolution, fat is the ultimate survival currency. If another famine hits next week, having an extra inch of bicep muscle won't keep you alive, but having belly fat absolutely will.
Precisely. The fat is prioritizing its own survival, and it is holding the muscle hostage to accomplish it.
Which leads us to the devastating long-term cost of this biological hostage situation. Because this localized hypothyroidism doesn't just make you gain fat, it actively prevents you from regaining your muscle. The paper outlines how the low T3 levels in the muscle actually impair myogenesis.
Myogenesis being the creation and regeneration of new muscle fibers. The D3 enzyme essentially pauses the muscle's ability to heal and grow.
And this creates a severe mismatch. Because your muscle is recovering at a glacial pace compared to the fat, your body maintains a state of hyperphagia.
Extreme, insatiable hunger.
Right. Your biology is screaming at you to keep eating until your muscle mass is 100% fully restored to where it was before the diet. But because the fat is being rebuilt so much faster, by the time your muscle finally limps across the finish line and gets back to normal, your fat mass has already completely overshot where it began.
Exactly.
You are heavier, and you have a much higher body fat percentage than before you even started dieting. The researchers call this collateral fattening. You gained collateral fat just trying to heal your muscle.
And if you extrapolate this over a lifetime, the consequences are severe. If someone repeatedly loses weight, regains it, loses it, regains it, they are weight cycling. Repeated weight cycling progressively destroys the baseline muscle mass while compounding the fat mass. This leads directly to a condition known as sarcopenic obesity, where a person has dangerously high body fat paired with clinically low muscle mass and strength.
The paper even links this to early life programming, which completely blew my mind. Have you ever considered how your metabolism was shaped before you even had a say in it? The researchers note that low birth weight infants, babies who experience starvation in the womb, who then undergo rapid catch-up growth after they were born, experience this exact same catch-up fat phenomenon.
The metabolic stress they experienced as infants essentially programs their skeletal muscle for an accelerated aging phenotype. It sets the baseline for those D3 enzymes, lowering their physical fitness and permanently altering their satiety and hunger responses for decades to come.
This completely reframes how we look at diet failures. For so many people listening, yo-yo dieting is viewed as a moral failing. You feel like you just lack willpower, but this data proves it is not a lack of willpower at all. Your body is literally unscrewing the light bulbs in your muscles. It is keeping you aggressively hungry until those muscles are rebuilt, and it is storing every spare ounce of energy as fat just in case you starve it again.
This raises an important question for anyone trying to improve their health. It completely invalidates the goal of simply losing weight. Because if you were just watching a number drop on a scale, you might be sacrificing muscle. Any weight loss attempt must be paired with strategies to fiercely protect skeletal muscle, like the strength training we discussed earlier. You have to force the body to keep the lights on in those rooms to prevent this D3 enzyme trap from ever springing.
And that brings us perfectly full circle. We started today looking at everyday hacks, the EGYM guide, showing us how heavy strength training, saunas, and HIIT workouts can force our baseline metabolism to burn hotter. But we dove deep into the biological fail-safes. We found the microscopic saboteur, that D3 enzyme, causing localized muscle hypothyroidism that hijacks our bodies to prioritize catch-up fat.
It's a profound shift in perspective. You move from viewing your metabolism as a simple math equation to respecting it as a highly complex, fiercely defensive ecosystem.
So, as we wrap up, we want to leave you with a final, somewhat mind-bending concept to ponder. We now know that skeletal muscle is programmable. We know it remembers early life metabolic stress and past diets through the action of these localized enzymes. So, could the future of weight loss lie entirely outside of counting calories? What if the next great frontier isn't a new diet, but discovering localized therapies that target the muscle directly? Could we utilize the very extreme temperature shocks we discussed at the beginning, like targeted saunas or cold plunges, to specifically reprogram those D3 enzymes inside our muscles? What if we can trick the muscle out of its evolutionary hibernation?
If we can learn to safely control local tissue deiodinases without altering systemic thyroid hormones, it would revolutionize how we treat metabolic health. We could finally tell the muscle that the famine is truly over.
You would finally have the keys to the fortress. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We hope this changed how you view your own engine. Keep asking questions, keep challenging the simple math, and above all, stay fiercely curious.